Hey guys, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to show you how to build a budget for a startup company. And if you've been following the channel, you know that I've been in finance for the last 15 years or so. And out of those years, I've been a corporate controller for about 6 years. And over that duration of time, I have built budgets for numerous companies. And today I'm going to focus on showing you how to build a budget for a startup company. And a startup company typically is a company with less than 100 employees. So today I'm going to show you the best practice in building the budget and a step-by-step tutorial. So let's dive into today's video. But first, if this is a topic you've been wanting to learn more about, smash that like button and let's jump into today's video. All right, just so that we're adding some structure to today's video, I'm gonna give you a quick overview of what we're gonna cover today in order to set up a budget for a startup company. So the first thing we'll do is we will define what a budget is. And then from there, we will look at what is considered a startup company. And then after we do that, we will look at why do we need a budget in the first place. We will look at who should get involved and the timing of the budget building, and also we'll look at a step-by-step guide on how to execute. So how do we define a budget? A budget basically is a balance between two things. The first thing is what we aspire to do as a company, and the second is what is realistic. So what we will do is we will balance between the goals and aspirations of the company, whether being reaching break-even point or being more profitable, and what is realistic and what can be accomplished based on a solid plan for the coming year. What do we consider to be a startup company? Typically, a startup company is a company with less than 100 employees, but the other attributes of a startup company is that it's pre-profit, meaning that we haven't yet reached the point of being profitable. The other attribute as well is high growth. Usually, a company that is a startup is growing more than 1.5x year over year. And the other thing is that it relies on fundraising. So the company, to operate the business, relies on raising funds from investors in order to operate and spend on growth. So at a very quick glance or a quick view of the budget, typically a budget will be consisting of the following items. First, you'll come up with the revenue plan, a realistic revenue plan that the company can achieve that is realistic and ambitious at the same time. And then from there, you have to layer in the cost of revenue. Basically, this is the cost of goods sold if you're a manufacturing company. And then from there, you have to come up with the headcount plan, which basically is the needed employees that you need to hire in order to achieve this revenue goals. And then after that, you layer in all the other operating expenses that the business needs to spend, such as rent, tools and software, and all the other things you need to spend to operate the business. Why do we even need to build a budget? So basically, a budget is a roadmap to the future. So the reason why you want to build it is that you want to achieve your financial targets. And these financial targets could be reaching a break-even point if you are pre-profit or haven't reached profitability yet. So it could be reaching break-even or increasing profits if you're already profitable. And the way to do that is to increase your sales and reduce your costs. The second reason you build a budget is to guide investors and show progress against the plan periodically. So as an outside investor, you look for the budget as the plan of the company for the next year. And for you, you want to see that and make sure the company is on the right road to progress. And the third reason you want to have a budget is you're going to use it for raising funds, whether through investors or through banks via debt. So basically you want to show, typically you need to show a 3-year plan in order for you to raise funds with investors or with banks. So who is involved in building a budget? Well, typically in building a budget, the controller and or the CFO are involved in the building blocks of the budget. And basically they'll provide general guidance into what's needed for the budget to be built, and also set up a calendar with due dates. And we'll go through all of that step by step in the next minutes here. And then also what they do is act as a sounding board, basically a sounding board in the sense that you get ideas and then you give feedback as far as whether these ideas are valid for the budget or not. And also just the overall ownership sits with the controller and or the CFO, depending on the structure of the company. But also in the process of building a budget, division heads will be involved in terms of providing input and feedback into the hiring needs for each of the respective teams. Also, they'll provide some specific budget requests. So basically, as a division head, you might have some specific requests as far as software or tools that you need in order for you to operate efficiently. Beside these two groups, you need the assistant controller or the manager who will actually be doing the compilation or compiling all of the operating costs together and building a budget. If you or anyone you know is preparing for a job interview in accounting, be sure to download my accounting interview checklist. It's 100% free and an amazing summary of the most common accounting interview questions. I'll leave a link in the description below. All right, so some basic things you need to remember before building a budget. The first thing is that you need to be moving up and to the right. And what I mean by that is that the budget needs to be moving the company forward in terms of sales and costs and profit. So the company needs to be making progress in the budget that you're building and moving forward and not backwards. The second thing is to start small and simple. A budgeting process is kind of overwhelming and you need to start somewhere. Start small with just a few things on the back of an envelope and then move it to Excel, and then from there it will grow into something much bigger. But it's important for you to begin small and simple so that you can begin the budgeting process. And remember to keep everyone informed. So that includes the CEO of the company, leadership in terms of the other executives. Keeping everybody informed periodically on the status of the budget and the numbers will keep everybody on the same page. One of the very first steps you want to take in building a budget is looking at where you are today and where you want to be in the coming year. So basically looking at this example here, a P&L, you're looking at revenue of, let's say, $11 million, cost of revenue is $7.5 million, and you're reaching an EBITDA of negative $500,000. And in this case, you want to look at this and say, okay, if this is where I am today, this year, where I want to be next year is somewhere around 20 million in revenue. And with that, a corresponding 15.4 million in cost of revenue will be there. So my gross profit will be 4.8 million, and then that will yield an EBITDA of positive 300,000. So this is just an example of where you can begin thinking and deciding on where you want to be in the next year. Okay, so let's talk about the steps of building a budget. So generally what you want to do is first set due dates. This will give everybody an idea on what your calendar looks like for the budget. And then you want to communicate those due dates. So come up with the due dates and send them, and I'll show you a template of an email you can send showing everybody in terms of the leadership team what the steps are and the due dates. And then from there, you need to come up with the revenue plan. After that, you need to come up with the headcount plan and then layer in all the other operating expenses. Once you have all that, basically you will be done with the budget. All right, so let's look at step number one, which setting due dates. So basically, let's look at a calendar example and show you what a calendar would look like for a budget. So in this example, we are in 2019 and we are building a budget for the year 2020. So an example would be that you are communicating your deadlines on November 1st. So on November 1st, you'll be sending out an email, and I'll show you a quick template of that, of what the deadlines are for the budget for the coming year. And then you'll say that on November 5th, the revenue plan is due. So that's the date that the revenue plan must be finalized for the budget to be complete. And then on November 7, that's when the headcount plan is due. So you're going to be collecting headcount plan from the executives in your company. And then after that, on November 11, that's going to be a management meeting to discuss. So you'll get everybody together in a room and discuss the different attributes of the budget, which we will discuss here in a few minutes. And then on November 12, that's when the team leads will adjust the headcount plan. So basically what happens is that you meet as a team and come up with new changes that needs to happen. So in the 12th, that's when the team leads will adjust the headcount plan to meet all of the discussion that happened in the previous day. And then from that point forward, then you have on November 15, adjusted headcount plan due. So that's when all the adjustments are made to the headcount plan. And then on the 19th is the first draft of the budget is going to be due. And then after that, you will provide or get comments from the CEO. So you'll communicate to the CEO that he needs to look at the budget and provide you with comments by the 22nd of November. That will lead you to a budget finalized on the 26th of November. And this is a quick example of what a calendar for the budget can look like. Okay, step number 2 is to communicate. So in step 1, we said we're going to set the due dates. Now it's time for us to communicate those due dates. So basically, here's an example template of what you can be saying in an email to your leaders in the company. Basically, you'll be saying, dear managers, we would like to announce the milestones for the 2020 budget. And then you layer in all of the due dates that you have set on the calendar so that everybody is aware of these due dates. And a good practice here is that periodically, every week or so, you send a reminder by email to these managers of the same due dates that you have here in the email. Step number 3 is going to be to build the revenue plan. So in step 2, we've communicated all the milestones for the budget, and now it's time for us to build the revenue plan. And for this example, we are looking at a manufacturer of yogurt, Gut Buddy Yogurt. And the model that they use is they manufacture the yogurt and sell it through a network of supermarkets nationwide. Some of the unique characteristics of this business as a maker of yogurt is that obviously this business is going to operate on a SKU. So basically your revenue is going to be broken down by SKU. And what do we mean by SKU here is stock keeping unit, which basically is the unit number that is unique to each of the flavors that the company makes. The other thing about this manufacturer is that they're going to have cost of goods sold as opposed to cost of sales. So basically their cost of goods sold is going to be broken down into direct material, direct labor, overhead, and all of this stuff that goes into cost of goods sold. And then the other thing is that this company has a gross margin of about 25%, and we'll discuss later on in the next minutes here why gross margin is important in building the budget. Let's talk about the philosophy of budgeting for revenue. So basically you want to build this like building a house. So you're going to start here with the foundation of what you aspire for. So in this example, let's say we aspire to make $25 million in revenue in the coming year. So then we'll layer in on top of that what we think is realistic. So if we aspire to 25 million, but what's realistic based on the forecast is 18 million, then we can finish building this house by saying, all right, if we aspire to 25, but what's realistic is 18, let's settle for 20 million, and that will be a good compromise between the two numbers. Let's look at the method that we use for revenue budgeting. So basically, there is a couple of different ways. The first one is bottom-up method, and this entails looking at the products or service that we sell, and then we multiply the number of units that we are planning to sell times the price per unit, and then that will give us the revenue for the company. Basically, it's called the bottom-up method because we are beginning from the bottom, or the actual product, and working our way up to the company revenue. We can compare this method to the other method, which is the top-down method. And in this one, we will look at the addressable market, and then from there, we will measure our market share, and then from that, we will come up with the company revenue by multiplying our market share with the addressable market. So let's build the revenue budget for Gut Buddy Yogurt using the bottom-up method. Basically what we need for that is to have all the flavors. So basically this company makes peach, strawberry, banana, raspberry, and mango flavors. And we have here the average price for each one. From there, we can layer in the actual sales in the current year. So if we sell in 2 different stores in Safeway, let's say this is a supermarket chain here in the US, and in Kroger, basically what we'll say is that here's the sales in Safeway and in Kroger, and then from that we get the total unit sales. So for this one here, for peach flavor, we sold 1.9 million units in 2019. You multiply that with the average price, and you get the total sales in the year. And then once you have the actual sales in 2019, you can then say, all right, basically what I'm going to assume here is that for each of these items, I'm going to expect a certain growth rate. So for peach, based on historical data, I think that it will grow by 30%. And that's going to give you the basis of the assumptions of what the actual revenue going to be in the next year. Once we have these assumptions regarding the growth of each of these SKUs in the next year, then we can layer in our sales for the next year by saying the revenue budget for the existing business. So for the existing business, we'll take the expected units that we expect to sell in the next year and layer it in here for each of the flavors, and then multiply that with the price per SKU, and then come up with the expected sales in 2020 for each of these SKUs. And basically from there, once you have the existing business, you can layer in new business. So for existing business here, as we said before, we were selling in 2 supermarket chains, and then in a new business section, we will say, all right, on top of that, we're gonna start selling in Whole Foods. And in Whole Foods, we expect to sell these number of units based on historical data, and from there, we can arrive at Whole Foods sales in 2020, and then basically we add the two together, the 2.9 from Whole Foods, and the 17 million from expected existing business for the next year, and that will give us the total revenue for the budget for the coming year of $20 million. So simply put, the revenue budget is the growth in the existing business plus the new business equals revenue budget. And some very quick tips on revenue planning is to be conservative with the numbers that you're putting forward. Second is to disclose your assumptions. And third is to get buy-in from leadership. And fourth is to solicit feedback and critique from your CEO and your leadership. So let's review our progress for the 2020 budget for Gut Buddy Yogurt. So far, what we basically did is created the revenue plan of $20 million. Right, now let's come up with the cost of goods sold, and this should be easier because now you have the volume that you expect in the coming year, and all you have to do is layer in the cost, which basically is something you know from historical numbers. You know that each of these SKUs will cost you this amount per SKU, and then when you layer in the expected unit sales in 2020, which we just came up with in the last few minutes, you can then multiply those and get the expected COGS or cost of goods sold in 2020 in the coming year. And as a pro tip, you can add a 2% for spoilage, which basically assumes that on average you lose 2% of your finished goods or your raw material in the process of manufacturing or for expiration of finished goods. Now let's review our progress with the budget. So basically right now we've built the revenue budget and we've added in the cost of goods sold, which tells us that the gross profit is going to be 4.8 million. The next step in the budget is going to be to come up with the headcount plan. And as an overall philosophy, when you are planning for headcount for the coming year, you should be looking at where you are today. So what is the headcount today by department? And then from there, you want to reach a goal. So your goal for the next year is to reach a certain revenue number. So what is the headcount that is needed to reach the revenue goal? And basically the planning here is that you're building the bridge between what is headcount today and what is the headcount needed to reach our future goals. So how do you do headcount planning for a startup? In this example here, for the company we're looking at today, Gut Buddy Yogurt, the breakdown of the headcount is that in sales and marketing, we have 20 employees. In admin, we have 10 employees. Procurement, we have 5. And total headcount is 35. So basically, we look at that and then we say, all right, for us to reach our revenue goal, the sales and marketing team needs to grow from 20 employees to 30 employees. And the admin team needs to grow from 10 to 12. So we need to be adding 2. And for procurement, which is the team that's buying all of the raw material and packaging and so forth, we need to grow from 5 to 8 employees in order for us to reach our goals. And that will give us a total headcount of 50 in the coming year. So basically, we're saying for us to reach our goals, we need to grow the company from 35 headcount to 50 headcount in the next year. So some tips for headcount planning is that you need to collaborate with team leads. Basically, these are the people who are know the most what they need in order for the company to reach the goals for the next year. And then ask tough questions. Questions like, do you really need to hire that many people for us to reach certain goals? Basically, you got to remember that hiring ahead is expensive because you got to pay payroll, benefits, you got to have a seat for them, a computer for them. So you got to be asking some questions and push back when someone is asking for more hiring than what you think is reasonable. And then also be conservative. Like we said, each hire will come with costs, so you gotta be conservative with what you're hiring for the next year. The next step in the budget is to come up with the operating expenses. So once you have the headcount plan, now it's time for you to come up with the operating expenses that the company needs in order to operate in the next year. And the operating expenses can be, you can think of them as broken in 3 categories. The first one is sales and marketing, general and admin, and then research and development and coming up with new products. And that will be your total operating expenses. So in planning for operating expenses, it's important for us to break them down to subcategories. So for example, for sales and marketing, we need to break that down further. And usually the biggest costs in sales and marketing are going to be the wages for the sales team and the commissions. So remember with the headcount plan that we just came up with, we expected the sales and marketing team to go up in headcount. So we need to add in a corresponding increase for year-over-year increase in the wages. For commissions, we are also expecting revenue to go up, so we should expect commission expense to go up as well in the coming year. For this specific company, there is marketing team wages, marketing events, and paid promotions. So these are the subcategories, and then you need to layer them in to look at the current year spend compared to the budget, and then the year-over-year change. Basically, when you look at the year-over-year change, that will give you an idea whether this is a reasonable increase, or if you have a decrease, that might be also an indication that maybe something is wrong in your budget, because typically the cost will increase when you're trying to achieve higher revenue. Then for the general and admin, basically you need to layer in the other costs, such as the plant rent. Typically that won't go up year over year unless you are planning a huge expansion in the business. That will stay the same. And then you have some office rent and obviously salaries for the team, the finance team, the HR team, and the executive team. You'll have some recruiting fees because remember, we are growing the business and we are hiring more headcount for the next year. So basically you need to increase year over year what you are spending on recruiting fees. And then you have some software and tools and you account for that as well here. And again, layer in year over year. And then from there, you have research and development, which in this example here for this company consists of research into coming up with new recipes. So you need to layer in some costs for that. And then you have some packaging trials, which basically you are spending money on coming up with new packaging. So that will be layered in here as well. So once you added up all of your operating expenses, you basically then have to layer in the costs that you added up for sales and marketing, G&A, and research and development. And basically in this case here, we added up 1.9 million for sales and marketing, 2.5 million for G&A, and then we have research and development 95K, and that gives us a total operating expenses for the budget of 4.5 million. And now that we've come up with the operating expenses, our budget is complete and we can layer it in the form of P&L. Basically, what we are saying is that our revenue is going to grow from 11 million to 20. Cost of revenue, we came up with 15.4 with a gross profit of 4.8 million. Operating expenses, we budgeted that at 4.5 million, and that will give us an EBITDA of 300,000. And some quick tips in coming up with the operating expenses is that basically you need to be thinking of an ROI. Every time you budget for a new expense, especially with software and tools and anything that you're going to spend on it the next year, you need to think, what kind of return on the investment I'm making from spending on that item in the next year. And the second thing is to ask for marketing details. When the marketing team is giving you some breakdown of their expenses for the coming year, you need to ask them for an itemized list of what they are planning to spend event by event and tool by tool. This way you can make a judgment on whether these are necessary expenses or not. And also you should be looking for EBITDA improvement. So you need to be looking year over year that EBITDA or our net profit is increasing year over year. You cannot be going backwards. You need to be moving the business forward. So this is it, guys. This is a quick tutorial on how to come up with a budget for a startup company. If you enjoyed today's video, give us a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, go ahead and subscribe to the channel.